Good evening and welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes in the Word. I am doing like most of you all, and that is I am working from home. I've got two cameras set up here, so if I seem like I'm divided, I'm trying to double task. I'm going live from our church page, Word Assembly, Bishop Keith L. Clark, as well as my personal page, Keith Clark. And I want you to join me for the next 3 nights for 15 minutes. Why? Because 15 minutes is enough time to change your life. And I want to talk about a subject that I think all of us can relate to, and it's the issue of our attitude. Somebody said, and you've heard this before, I'm sure you have. You've seen it on a post, read it in a book, seen it on a sign, a bumper sticker. And that is that it's not what happens to you, but it's your attitude toward what happens to you. Or perhaps you've heard it this way. It's not what determines your altitude or how high you can go in life, is your attitude. And the truth of the matter is, all of us, those of us who are followers of Jesus Christ, we would do ourselves a great service, a great benefit, if we were honest and just say that there are times, though I am a follower of Jesus Christ, I'm not always having the right attitude. And I think that's true about all of us. No matter how anointed you are, no matter how gifted you are, no matter what responsibility you have, all of us have to be mindful to make sure we have the right attitude, because we're not always conducting ourselves and viewing things the way we should. And so I wanted to come on tonight and for the next 3 nights share with you 3 things that can help you have a good attitude, or the right attitude. And the right attitude is an attitude, watch this, that honors God, and an attitude that blesses people. If you've ever wondering about what really attitude, or what does my attitude have to do with impacting the lives of people, that's it. Know that the right attitude will always honor God, and it will always help people. Paul, in his letter to the church at Thessalonica, is writing basically to encourage them about some things that they had grown a sense of despair about, mainly the resurrection of those who had died in the Lord. What will happen to them? Is it over for them? And will we experience the resurrection in our lifetime? Will Jesus come back? Or was it just something they told us to hold on till times got better? And so Paul writes a letter to encourage them that the resurrection is real and that it's going to happen. And those who die prior to Christ's return, when it's all said and done, we're all going to be together again. But he's not only encouraging them, but he's also correcting them. There were some areas in their lives as a church they had gotten lax on. There were some things that had happened as it relates to some of the false teachings that had taken place, where they were not living up to the standard that God had saved them to live. It's called sanctification, is a term that Paul used. And so he writes to encourage, he writes to correct, and he writes to challenge. It's in the last chapter, as he gets ready to close out this letter, that he starts giving them some instructions. And that 3 verses, I'll only deal with 1 tonight. There are 3 verses that he uses to help us with this having the right attitude. And before I read that, let me say this to you. The right attitude, as I told you, will always honor God and help people. But the thing that I think, if I can really be honest with you, that I think really blessed me when the Lord gave me this passage to teach, is that I've discovered that the right attitude just makes your day a whole lot better. The right attitude. I'm not going to teach you anything based upon no positive thinking and things of that nature. This is not something that's some new age. Right from the Word of God, I want to show you how to have the right attitude. But I want to tell you that when you have the right attitude, it makes your whole day better. When you can have the right attitude, it makes your whole day better. Listen to what Paul says to this church at Thessalonica, and I'll read verse 16 to you. He says 2 words, rejoice always. If you're going to have the right attitude, then you've got to learn how to rejoice always. Now, when I say rejoice always, when Paul says rejoice always, he literally means that there should never be a moment in our lives where we are not actively, you ready for this, joyous. There's a difference, and I'll define joy for you in just a minute, but I want to make sure you understand that. There's a difference between joy and happiness, and we'll deal with that in just a minute. But when Paul is telling the church at Thessalonica to rejoice always, it's in the present imperative. Present means it's a continuous action. It needs to happen now and keep on. Imperative, it's a command, so it's a continuous command. So Paul is telling the church, in light of the fact of what you were feeling or thinking about your loved ones who went on before you, and about Christ's return, and light of the fact of the stuff that you've heard that's caused you to become somewhat lax in your sanctification, as he's encouraged and corrected them in those truths, he closes out and he says, here's what I need you to continually do. Rejoice always. Rejoice always. Now, again, it's a continuous action we ought to have. Now, the question comes, how do you do that, Bishop? Well, I want to do 2 things tonight. I want to share with you what it means to rejoice, and then tell you how you can do that always. But before we get started in that, let me be perfectly clear that there's a difference between having joy and happiness. Happiness, in the base of the definition, is a feeling that's based upon circumstances being right or things going your way. Think about it. You are happy when life is going your way. Come on, let's be honest about that. We are really serious about our happiness, because we understand that happiness, we feel good. We are full of hope and expectation when we're happy, because happiness depends on happenings. And if the happenings are happening the way you want them to, then you're happy. But joy is different. Joy, that word kairos there in the Greek, or kairos there in the Greek, and it carries the idea of having a state of peace, overwhelm, excitement. It is a sense of gladness based upon God's grace at work in your life. Let me put it where you could really pick it up. Joy is a mindset that allows you to be glad regardless of the circumstances. Joy is a mindset where you can be glad, and all of the things that come with glad, because you are aware of God's grace. Another way you can look at it, which is actually the way I taught it when I taught the fruit of the Spirit about joy, it's J-O-Y, when Jesus' outlook is yours. When you're able to look at life and see it from Jesus' perspective. Because Jesus had joy. Wasn't always happy, but there was an inner sense of excitement. There was an inner sense of gladness, an inner sense of fulfillment because of his outlook. Now watch this now. Having joy or rejoicing, joy, simply means having joy on repeat. Having your mind, your state of being glad, and that is a continuous action or a continuous mindset that you have. You know something about having on repeat. Let me see if I can explain it to you this way. You've ever liked a song and you heard it over and over and over and over and over again? It's because you had it on repeat. It went off and then it came right back on. Paul is saying when it comes down to joy, when it comes down to your mindset, when it comes down to your perception, when it comes down to your outlook, he says, I want you to be glad, and I want you to be glad on repeat. But I thought you said, Bishop, happiness was, how can I be glad? How can I have a state of gladness when things are not going the way I want to? You said that's happiness. I thought joy and happiness were the same things. No, happiness depends on outer circumstances. Joy, watch this, is the glad attitude or the glad mindset based upon the grace that you have received. And then he says, I want you to rejoice, but I want you to rejoice always. Meaning, don't ever stop being here, or don't ever stop being of this mindset. Don't ever stop not having joy. Now, how do you do that, Bishop? How can I repeatedly have joy? 3 things real quick, and I'm getting out of your way because 15 minutes is enough time to change your life. Number 1, you can have joy repeatedly. You can have it on repeat when you understand that God's love for you won't change. Tonight, get it rest in your mind that the way God feels about you, his love toward you, his willingness to do what's best for you won't ever change. When you're good, on top, he loves you. When you're down and you're wrong, he loves you the same. So always know that God's love for you won't ever change. Number 2, and this is very important, that everything you go through, you can learn from. You can have a state of gladness. You can rejoice the more. Jesus' outlook can be yours when you understand that his love won't change. Number 2, that everything you go through, you can learn from. Why is that? Because when you learn the lesson, you get the blessing. And sometimes the blessing is in getting the lesson. Number 3, and I'm gone. The reason why you can have joy on repeat, the reason why you can have a mindset that you are glad, not only because God's love doesn't change towards you, not only everything you go through in life, you'll learn from it, but you can have joy when you understand that your life is always in his hands. No matter what's going on around you, your life is in God's hands. And when you understand that, my brother, my sister, you can rejoice always. I love y'all. Remember, you're alive, you're important, and you're changing. Thank you for 15 minutes. Why? Because it's enough time to change your life. God bless you.